Think about the last time you drove a car. You pressed the gas, and the gears took care of themselves. You didn't have to think about it for a single second. Now think about a big truck. One of those 18-wheelers you see on the highway carrying everything from groceries to furniture. Inside that truck, the driver might be shifting gears by hand. Not 4 or 5 gears like an old car, 10, 13, sometimes 18. And he's been doing it for the past 8 hours straight. And he did that for 8 hours straight. So the question is, why do regular cars use automatic transmissions, while trucks still use manual transmissions? The answer is surprisingly simple, and it has almost nothing to do with technology. This is simple why. Let's start with the basics. Your car probably has somewhere between 6 and 8 gears. It weighs maybe 3,000 or 4,000 pounds, and all it needs to do is get you from a stoplight to highway speed. A big truck is a different animal entirely. Fully loaded, it can weigh up to 80,000 pounds. That's like strapping 20 cars together and trying to move them with one engine. And here's the problem. Truck engine only works well inside a very narrow speed range. If the engine spins too fast, it wastes fuel. Too slow, and it struggles. So instead of making a few big jumps between gears like a car, a truck needs lots of tiny steps, each gear just a little bit faster than the last, to keep the engine happy while slowly building up speed with all that weight. That's why you have 10, 13, or 18-speed gearboxes. That's because the laws of physics require it. Now here's where it gets interesting. In your car, shifting gears, even on a manual, is pretty smooth. That's because car gearboxes have something called synchronizers. Think of them as little helpers inside the gearbox that match up the speeds of the gears before they connect, so the shift feels silky. Most truck gearboxes don't have those helpers. The gears are just bare metal spinning at different speeds, so the driver has to do the matching himself. He presses the clutch pedal, moves the stick to neutral, lets go of the clutch, taps the gas to speed up the engine just right, then presses the clutch again, and slides the stick into the next gear. That process is called double clutch engagement, and drivers do it hundreds of times a day. Of course, when it's out of sync, you hear a terrible grinding sound. Get it really wrong on a hill, and the truck can stall and start rolling backward with 40 tons of cargo. Good truck drivers made this look easy, but it took years of practice to get there. So the obvious question is, why not just put an automatic in a truck like we did with cars? Well, people tried, but there was a big problem. The automatic transmission in your car uses something called a torque converter. You don't need to know exactly what that is. Just think of it as a bowl of thick liquid sitting between the engine and the gears. The engine spins one side of the liquid, and the liquid pushes the other side, which turns the gears. It's smooth. It's easy. But here's the catch. Some of the engine's power gets lost in that liquid. It turns into heat instead of motion. In a car, that's no big deal. You lose maybe a few % of power. But a big truck burns through enormous amounts of fuel every week. Even a small percentage of wasted power adds up to thousands of dollars lost per truck per year. So for trucking companies running hundreds or thousands of trucks, that little bit of waste was a deal breaker. And it wasn't just the fuel. A regular manual gearbox for a truck cost a lot less to buy, sometimes $15,000 to $20,000 less than an automatic. It was also simpler inside. Any truck mechanic could take it apart and fix it with basic tools. Parts were cheap and available everywhere. If the clutch wore out, which is the part that wears out first, replacing it cost maybe $1,500 to $3,000. A big repair on an automatic could easily hit $8,000 or more. For a driver who owns his own truck and makes his living on thin profit margins, that difference could mean the difference between staying in business and going broke. Plus, experienced drivers liked being in full control. When you're going down a steep mountain with 80,000 pounds behind you, you want to choose exactly which gear you're in. You don't want a computer making that decision for you. So the trucking world stuck with manual, not because they were old-fashioned, but because it was cheap. Then in 2001, a company called Volvo came up with a really clever idea. Instead of making a regular automatic with that power-wasting liquid system, they took a normal manual gearbox and added a computer and a small electric motor to do the shifting automatically. So the gears inside were exactly the same as a manual. The connection between the engine and the wheels was still direct. No liquid, no wasted power. But the driver didn't have to move the stick or press the clutch anymore. The computer did it for him. They called it the iShift, Volvo's automated gearbox that reads the engine, the load, and the road, then shifts on its own. And here's what made it special. The computer shifted perfectly every single time. It never missed a gear. It never wasted fuel with a bad shift. It didn't get tired after 8 hours. Truck drivers and companies were doubtful at first. Many laughed at it. But when they tested it, the numbers spoke for themselves. Fuel economy was just as good as a skilled human, and often better. By 2007, Volvo brought it to North America. By 2013, it came standard on all their highway trucks. By 2021, they'd sold over 1 million of them worldwide. The simplest way to think about it, imagine you're driving a manual truck, but there's a robot sitting next to you. The robot has 1 foot on the clutch and 1 hand on the gear stick. It watches the speedometer, listens to the engine, knows how heavy the load is, and even knows if you're going uphill or downhill. And it shifts gears for you, faster and smoother than you ever could. That's basically what this system is. It's a manual gearbox with a robot operator. The industry calls it an automated manual transmission, or AMT. It's not the same thing as the automatic in your car. It's a manual that shifts itself. And because the gears are still metal on metal with a direct clutch, it doesn't waste power the way a traditional automatic does. If this technology is so good, why hasn't every truck switched already? A few reasons. First, trucks last a very long time. A well-maintained big truck can run for over 1 million miles. Fleets replace their trucks every 5 to 10 years, and individual owners hold on even longer. So even though almost every new truck sold today in North America, over 90%, comes with this automated system, there are still millions of older manual trucks on the road that haven't been retired yet. Second, in many parts of the world, across Africa, South Asia, and South America, the automated systems cost a lot more upfront. A manual gearbox is much cheaper to buy and much easier to fix with local mechanics and local parts. When the nearest specialized dealer is hundreds of miles away, simple beats smart. And third, a small number of experienced drivers in specialized jobs like hauling extremely oversized loads up mountain roads, still prefer doing it by hand. They trust their own feel and timing more than any computer. That group is shrinking every year, but they haven't disappeared yet. Here's what's really happened. The trucking industry didn't go from manual to automatic the way cars did. They skipped the traditional automatic completely because it wasted too much fuel and cost too much to fix. Instead, they waited until someone figured out how to make a manual shift itself. That turned out to be the answer. It's cheaper to run than a regular automatic. It's easier to drive than a manual. And it saves fuel just as well, or better, than the best human drivers. Today, every major truck maker in the world offers one. The old-school 18-speed manual, that loud, grinding, skill-demanding gearbox, is slowly disappearing. Not because drivers weren't good enough, but because someone built a machine that could do the same job with the same gears, just a little more consistently. And in an industry where saving even 1% on fuel means millions of dollars, a little more consistently is everything. That is today's Simple Why. If you learned something new, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.